Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Still getting the final parts of my setup done. Let's get this out the way. I'll get back to my phone a little bit later. All right. Good to go. All right. Good morning, my neighbors. Welcome to another episode of BYTTT Before You Take the Trade. Got a lot of good stuff for y'all. So without further ado, I'm not going to slow you down. Let's go ahead and get right on to it. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and discuss is the fact that it looks like we have a very interesting move on our tickers. I had to like really put some thought into this because I never liked the volume on these new highs. I did feel like it was just drifting up. A very good example of that is like Microsoft, but you can kind of see what's going on inside of this chart that we're getting some moves here that is just rising. So what I like to do is put some trend lines on here because everything has to revert back to its means. And what trend line does, it just lets you know that these bounces are going to happen. So let's go ahead and start marking off some things. We already know that this is one. Um, don't you go anywhere. So we got here. Then we try to get up in here. And I think this is our last one right here. So it's almost like these areas are getting super, 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 super tight. And I think this is probably their target if we did kind of fall to the downside. I'm very curious is this the beginning of the end, right? We got a nice little micro trend that is forming and building, and that would probably mean that these two areas right here will probably start off putting some pressure onto this dynamic here. Now, there's a couple things that I noticed here was we almost are building what I deem as a nice little support here because we tried to sell off in this area, and guess what we ended up doing? We just kept on knocking at the door, kind of got up into the here, got some friends, and then just kind of rock it off. So I want to know, what does that mean? So as we go through this week, I'm probably going to go ahead and leave this drawing the same way and see if the Nasdaq actually follows suit, or do we fall all the way down to the downside. So that said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the indices because they're a lot more simpler. They, like for example, CL. That's what's supposed to be here. You could kind of see with CL, we kind of tried, but if we look at this like a H pattern, but it's a very shallow H pattern, so I do feel like this is just an order block in itself. Now, are they building an order block so that way they can reject it and continue to the downside? Very possible. But in the event that they are not, then we're probably going to go ahead and get a major move to this downside, and that's going to go ahead and have a very, very interesting effect to our entire situation when it comes down to oil. Now, don't forget, inventory is to borrow. Okay, right here is gold. When I get to the news, you're gonna kind of see what I'm talking about. But I could see gold really get into that 3,500, 3,600 for various reasons. But what I'm gonna cover later on in the news segment is gonna really break this down. But if you kind of see, it kind of looks like a W, don't it? And then when I kind of did something like this, it looks like a bull pennant. Everything here is telling me gold upside. So if you like some tickers like GDX or anything that has an effect with gold, you might want to check those tickers out. If it's giving you some of this patterns here, it might be time to go ahead and check them out. Silver, it is now. Silver had already destroyed any of the downside momentum that was trying to be put over here, especially with this two candle setup. And you could kind of see they built a nice little base and they're taking it back over. So I'm very curious on this one because now it looks like it could drag that thing all the way back up. So very, very interesting dynamic here, and I'm very, very curious on how the market reacts to that. I really think silver is going to get to that $40, which is going to really move the commodities. Here's the British pound. The British pound is continuing to rise, but it does look like a bear flag a little bit, and I don't like this little hitch. And if we don't really start to take over these areas here, we might get one of those British pound rejections somewhere. Let's be very cautious with this. Let's go probably something like that right? We already did one of the rejections there. Yeah, it'll be kind of cool to get up in here, but we already know that's going to be tough. But let's just say we're having problems here, right? And this problems is what built this whole entire momentum. They try to use that support, and now it's starting to fail. If this is true, then that's the reason why we kind of had that close below and continuation, and they're testing to get back up in there. If we cannot get this MACD to curl up and start to get into this upside, we may have a little bit of a problem, Houston, and that thing's going to go ahead and drop down the rest of the market. So keep that in mind. Bitcoin is looking like this. It still looks like a bull pennant as well, kind of like gold. But if it starts to extend out too far here, it's going to really discourage buyers. I think they're targeting the 125,000, but you need to find yourself a base, and this base is not showing me anything that's saying, hey, we're going that way. Here's the Russell. The Russell is kind of sideways too. I really think this is going to be the sleeper for the most part. I think we're going to get a lot of people that's going to go ahead and invest inside of the Russell. So I'm very curious on how this actually pans out. But generally speaking, look for the Russell to go ahead and continue to the upside. Maybe even get into that 23, which will then lead us to test that 2,500 again. And then last one, just a few stabs at this. Here we have is the infamous, the undeniable heavyweight champ of the world. We got ourselves the US dollar. We got ourselves a nice little doji here, rejecting this area, which is what I was very concerned about. And if this is going to continue to the downside, then we're probably going to go ahead and get down into this register again. But again, we've been putting multiple bullish divergence. So is this just pullback so that way they can make another leg lower and get us down into that 95? That's what I'm looking for. That will give the market a nice little rally. Knowing that July is supposed to be a bullish month, we are still currently bullish. So again, we could finish with a bullish doji for the month. That's very possible. But I want to see this dollar kind of break down, because I think this whole entire retracement is either A, they are breaking down the uptrend, or B, they're going to make a different micro downtrend. But again, you can't move that line yet because it hasn't made a higher high. So we just got to sit and watch here. All right. So go ahead, everybody. We're going to go ahead and make you pull out a pen and a pad so that way we can go ahead and give you the news. Now, we got a whole lot of things that we want to go ahead and break down over here. There we go. So in today's news, we got quite a few stuff. I already told you what's going to go on for this week all the way down to Friday. So let's focus on the fact that Jay Powell is running his mouth in the next couple of hours. And that's going to probably really rock out the dollar. I think if he says something that's relatively spicy and starts to put in more deflationary actions, which is like a strength of a dollar, which is going to go ahead and make the prices of things fall down. You're going to see that in the market first. That means NQ will probably drop. This is going to really throw the market into a tizzy. And we're probably going to go ahead and test like 50-day moving averages on a lot of your favorite tickers if they have not already tested it. So very, very interesting. And the reason why I said 50-day moving averages is because, again, we're talking about 60 days. April was back in that point. So that's way past 60 days. And we've been on a relatively rise ever since the April buyback, or buyback up, I guess, or buy the dip, however you want to look at it. It doesn't matter. So I'm looking at that as a potential. So keep in mind that Jay Powell is going to open his mouth, and the moment that he opens his mouth is going to make things very, very interesting, knowing that the money supply is going to drop and knowing that we're going to have a whole lot of earnings coming up. I find this very strategic, and this is probably going to go ahead and shake up the market. So keep that in mind, as positions are going to be altered in the middle of 8:30 going into the 9:30 open. All right. And as we continue over the news, let's go ahead and talk about this right here. Look, trading fintech giant using options ahead of earnings. Look, I think anything in the financial space is very solid, and PayPal is not so far away from that. So BYPL, to be honest, I like the chart. It reminds me a little bit about Square and everything else. But I remember when this stock was freaking bananas back during the pandemic, and I found this very interesting. as we have not only got through the pandemic low, we got through a whole lot. And I think this was all because of the fact that people wasn't touching cash and everything, so they were anticipating that, oh, places like fintech like this was going to stay up there and everything else, but all it is pour money, and then they siphoned everybody else along the way, especially with the whole entire 2022. So if this is going to be following a scale just like how SoFi kind of went above, then we're probably going to go ahead. Excuse me. We're probably going to go ahead and break out to this upside, looking like a W. So looking for PayPal to cross 100 and really rock off, maybe even getting back to 128, 130. Kind of a laggard if you really think about it. Let's look. It returns money to their shareholders through their EPS, and they're bringing in $7 billion when it's all said and done. And in the space that they also have something that's very competitive to Block or Square. They provide your credit card merchant. They provide what was it? Credit card merchant. They provide your own personal exchanging of cash, very similar like Zelle, which is your Venmo product. Um, and I believe they are starting to get into the investment space. I gotta double check that to be sure, but you take a look at them, see how you like it. I prefer Cash App, so I would say overall, Square is the real way to go from a lot of stuff that they provide. But if you want to kind of see an alternative, is where PayPal comes into play. All right, let's keep this news going. The next one we have is this right here. Just like I kind of broke down not too long ago, the Nasdaq. And again, this is going to 1999. So just for a little bit of an exercise, we're going to go ahead and take a stab at this theory. Nasdaq 100 momentum unmatched since 1999. So brace for a shakeout. Really, brace for a shakeout. Wasn't this a shakeout? Wasn't that a shakeout? Uh, let's start talking about some shakeout. Was it 2022 the shakeout? I just feel like they be throwing this smoke and mirrors thing. Isn't this a pandemic? Isn't that a shakeout? All right, so let's get over to 1999. What are you talking about with 1999? Actually, I'm gonna go to a monthly chart. Let me make this even more entertaining. So 1990. Okay, so brace for a shakeout. So are you saying that this rise that's happening here, let me bring this down a little bit. Are you saying that this rise right here is our proverbial shakeout, kind of like the 2000 where we had the dot com bubble? Is or are you saying that all this race to AI is our entire breakdown? Like, is that what you're saying? Are we are we going to the 2,400 level of the Nasdaq? Come on, people, let's be serious. So let's like really squeeze this chart. So I guess a shakeout is, or actually, you know what? Maybe this. Maybe they're saying whatever rise here. If we go ahead and throw a Fibonacci over here, and let's get the main right. Are you saying that we're going to get a reversal that's going to go to our 786 off of the momentum that's there? Like, there's a lot of questions here that I'm like, what are you doing, BTIG, whoever you may be, right? This out of curiosity, what do you mean over there? If you don't have CNBC Pro News, go ahead and get that. It's going to go ahead and give you a little insight on what analysts are saying, so that way you can build your theses and be as objective as possible. But we could go ahead and look at this as a whole. Why the conversation was it here? Why is it the fact of here? Is it because it's just so vertical? Are you calling this whole entire area from here to our current? Is this what you're saying is requiring a shakeout? Like, make it make sense. Like, I don't like the term in itself, because I do believe at the end of the day this market has been on a complete rally, and I just feel like they're trying to scare retail investors, not traders, investors, to get out of their position, which is going to fuel sales, and those sales are going to go ahead and hit some stop losses on some investors, which then going to go ahead and incidentally start creating new highs. So remember, I've always said this before: buy the rumor, sell the news. So they're saying that this is the momentum unmatched since 1999. So brace for a shakeout. Say that there's nothing comparing. Nothing at all. Okay, out of curiosity, what are you comparing it to? Let's go ahead and grab some of this information right here. Let's see. We're going to go ahead and measure from top to bottom. So we're talking about a 120% increase from October of 2022. Is that what you're discussing? Let's go back over to 1999 and see if that is the case. Let's go ahead and grab that. And we're going to do a couple things since 1999. That's what the words were, since 1999. So we got 1999 details right here. That was our nice pop. We got our whole entire bubble that was increased there. So let's just say, are they saying that this? Ooh, maybe. Is that what they're saying? That we're at 129% of an increase in 99. Let's go ahead and look at some of these legs. And this is why whenever you see these articles and everything else, it's very important that you do some objective movement so that we can understand what's happening. So let's take this one. Can we talk about 2002? 2002 shot up 182%. It had a 786 retracement. Are they saying because it's at 129 it's going to go ahead and fall through the 786? No. I don't see that either, because there's 182% after the recovery of the dot-com bubble right here, and that didn't fall to the 786. Actually, that spearheaded everything that happened during the housing bubble, and the housing bubble has been on a tear ever since God knows when, and I don't understand your statement. So take it with a grain of salt. Not saying that it's completely inaccurate. If you want to check out the article, check out CNBC. But I will tell you this right now. When I see statements like that, I'm curious and I do my own research. You should do the same. All right. The last article I'm going to have for y'all is the fact that they are saying that this big bank stock has upside despite its 20% year-to-date rally. Interesting. Year to date. Let's go check them out. So you can kind of see right here, this article is based on JPM. JPM has been on a tear, and if you've been watching my show, I've been covering JPM, just saying that it looks really, really good. We did attempt to short this bad boy for a little bit, but again, we do not just give money away. So even though we tried to short it, we took a small percentage. We thought it could continue to the direction that it had, and that's exactly what it did. So let's go ahead and look at year to date. So year to date would be, all right, we got December, January. So right here. So we got January here. It's a little more than 20%. I would say 20% plus. Is that 23%? All right. Still has upside. I agree. I do agree that JPM still got some upside. I do think at the end of the day, whatever happened in April with the buyback here, I do think that we are sitting on top of a very, very strong uptrend over here. Let me go ahead and bring this a little bigger for y'all. And you can kind of see we've been riding from this lower register and kind of coming into this area. And based on that parameter, I think they're just testing for the most part. I think they would never want to get back to 262, because then you're probably going to get more recent investors out. So let's just consider this. Is this leg, our retracement that we're testing, sitting at the 382 and it's giving some solid bounces? Could this be the one that breaks out to this upside? Well, we already got our micro downtrend that's over here, and they're trying to force that move, and they are relatively struggling to hold it to the downside. So if this does not go back and revisit the 382 around that $283 price level, yeah, I could see that, and it will make new highs, and I could adjust my trend line, and we could continue to maybe even put real pressure on that 300. Now the question is, from here to here, let's just assume that it's going to go ahead and give us an additional 20% from this level here. So let's 15, and let's call it here. Probably about 340 is a good area. If I wanted to be modest about it, it's about $57. So let's call it 57. That'd be 25. So about 307, 310. Let's call it 310. Let's go with psychological level. JPM 310. Check out the calls. See if you like it. All right, let's go ahead and keep this going. So earnings is coming up, and I got a couple of tickers that I'm very curious on what's going on with that earnings. So let's go ahead and get that wrapped up. We got DHI that's going to be reporting this morning. This is going to give us some insight on what's going on with housing, and I guess building permits are sound. Look at that nice little pop. It's up $8 and continue to the upside with a nice little 16% surprise. Again, don't chase the cat. I do believe you want to wait for this thing to find some support before you go ahead and just jump into this one. What can I see? I would say we're going to be above the 200, so this should drag the 50 up for the most part. And this was, and that's the fun part about trend lines. If you wanted to gamble, you could have, because this thing was sitting right here. Is it going to hold before the market opens? Maybe, maybe not. But again, this is coming right off of this trend line. Nice little stop loss under the pivot would have been great, and that's why this is up like $8. Can it get to 165 again? I think so. I really do think so. So look for maybe some 165 calls on DHI. Really, the option chain is not the greatest, so I do suggest you probably do this from an investment standpoint more so than actually just jumping into this bad boy. But I am not a fiduciary. I am not a financial advisor. I am not someone that you just want to go ahead and run and listen to. It's mostly entertainment purposes, and you need to do your own due diligence so that we can make sure what you see is a proper investment. So go ahead and do that when you get the chance. But I love what DHI looks like. If you don't know who they are like the Metro PCS of housing, right? It's just not the most greatest of quality, but guess what? They pump them out like it is nobody's business. All right, so let's go ahead and keep this going. We got RTX. RTX is Raytheon, and this one had their earnings coming up this morning as well. They anticipated on 1.4 estimate, and we're also looking for, I'm sorry, estimated their earnings or their EPS 1.4, and their revenue they're looking for $20 billion. So we're looking for them to stay in line. I think they're going to stay in line. I think they're going to test levels under 150 just to see if they got a strong foundation, but I think it's going to stay above 150, so keep that in mind. Lots of tickers. We got LMT. We are at the heart of the kickoff of earnings season, so these things are going to come in fast. Gotta get you know the path. All right, so we're anticipating a 6.5 EPS on Lockheed Martin. I find that very questionable for the most part, but we'll see what happens. Might get yourself a nice. If it does pop up, then that means this whole entire section was accumulation. If it breaks down and gets under 419, we're probably going to go ahead and come down to maybe around here inside of this gap to like $400. So that's the one I'm very curious about. Kind of still looks like a bear flag. Well, we got a pole, and this is the pin or pennant, and then it's going to explode to the downside, allowing for it to get into that 400 level. But I will say this: I don't think it'll get into pandemic lows. That would probably be insane, like around here. But I do think a nice little solid retracement after making this whole entire accumulation phase and not really showing that they got some real strength will probably invalidate that bear flag and start to use those that believe it's a bear flag as liquidity to push it right back up. All right, in the afternoon we got TXN. This is Texas Instruments. Interesting ticker. I've always wondered how it operates from semiconductor space. It doesn't really run smoothly like everybody else, like AMD's and NVIDIA's, but as far as this leg and run from the April run up, it has, right? Maybe this is talk of Taiwan Semiconductor and getting the supplies or everything else. Who knows? But at the end of the day, the chart doesn't lie and numbers don't lie. And it looks like this $200 level is going to be its new support. And they may test down into some of the fib levels. And I would love to kind of see this thing get it to 208 and then explode. And then they can really grab some of that sell side liquidity. All right, and then the last one that's going to be reporting is Capital One Finance, one of my faves. I think they are a little bit on that high side. I think they're going to get something along the lines of the JP Morgan Chase You made about 20%, and there's still some upside. It's financial, and they're trying to expand on their end for the other financial products. But I am curious, are they going to get into some of that fintech stuff? And because fintech is really doing their thing, and right now, uh, they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. I feel like they waited way too long. Still solid company, still return money to shareholders. And I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, but if they were going to make that penetration, I think they should have did it during the pandemic. Test it out, break it the whole entire time, be part of this pullback, and then see if they can get customer retention. Because Robinhood looks good. I know I keep bringing that up, but it really does look good. All right, so let's go ahead and check out the earnings for tomorrow. We got Hilton, really well run company. The heiress is not the greatest in reputation, but hey, I digress. We got ourselves 2.04 is what they're anticipating on the EPS with $3 billion in revenue. But this is another one that looks really, really good from the recovery back in April, which kind of gave you that August bounce. So we'll see how that relatively goes. I don't think they'll ever reach that pandemic low because they really did a really good job running this company to this direction. They do pay dividends. It's nothing. But for those shareholders that's been there for a while, actually, I could probably adjust this whole entire trend line because it really pushes up to this level. So this is how I traded it in the middle of July. I think I had sent an alert to the community. I think that's what that level is. But yeah, Hilton is a solid company. Let's go ahead and keep this going. There's a not so solid company. It's AT&T. They've lost their market share years, and I mean years ago, right? If you don't know much about AT&T, 99 2000s is roughly around here, and of course dot-com bubble, it just kind of fell. Then the housing bubble, it kind of created all types of problems. That's where you get that. But when we think about this is also the company that had AT&T, that had Apple phones. They're the ones that really propelled Apple to where they are. And it looks like when they lost their exclusivity, they have just never really returned to a solid form. After going ahead and affecting dividends in this ticker, uh, there was a lot of controversy going around trying to figure out what they're going to do here. I think they thought they were a growth company at one point because this was very weird that they affected their dividends. They have 7 billion shares floated. So I've always thought they were going to do some reverse splits or whatever the case may be, kind of consolidate their debt. But hey, I am not the one that's running their financial area. So CFO, if you want some tips, I'll help you out a little bit. Anyways, let's go ahead and keep this going. Got a lot. NEE is Next Era Energy. They do a lot of that. If you know this logo, this is probably a company that is in your space. Next Era Energy is trying to continue to that upside. I think they want to get back into those 90s here, so we'll keep that in mind. They do pay dividends. Again, it's not the greatest, but for its area, it's not too bad. It's in the utility space, so a lot of hedge funds pour their money in here and just rely on the dividends because utilities is not going to go out of business anytime soon. So check out Next Era Energy for your. Actually, you know what? Let me do this. I did say I'm going to go ahead and keep adding when I find stuff like this. All right, put in my dividends area. Next Era. Let's keep that going. All right. Good. And tonight is when we going to get spicy. All right. You're going to get companies like Google, right? Google is in a very interesting spot. I had released something out to the community, kind of something that was very similar to this. And what I'm looking for is possibly something along the lines of a Golden Cross continuation. Now, I wanted to kind of like really hold down this earnings cycle and really put some pressure onto this gap, get it into that 192, 193. But it is not doing the best of things, but it's not doing the worst of things either. I think the antitrust stuff is behind them. They've partnered with companies like Uber for their Waymos. There's a lot of things that they got on the works, and also they are a great company. I use them for my workspace. If you haven't had a Google Drive and you haven't tried it out, it's a very, very seamless product. I think they're the ones that put pressure on Microsoft to go ahead and go with Cloud 360 or whatever it is called. Very, very good very, very good product. All right. And then we have Tesla, which everybody's probably sitting with their popcorn trying to figure out what the hell's going on with Tesla, especially after Elon Musk and his bestie is no longer besties. And it looks like they're going to go ahead and try to have a nice little attack of Tesla. You know, government subsidiaries, all types of things has been in the works. And I won't be surprised there's a come to the hot seat CEO moment in the earnings call from their board. So going to be very interesting how this earnings is. I think they're anticipating another red quarter. It's 39 cents. You're not returning money to shareholders, Elon. Come on, baby. $22 billion in revenue, though. So if he can find a way to trim the work of the staff, that's probably going to be some space for them to shave. The last positive EPS was over here. I don't think another split is necessary, but it might stabilize it because people are going to be more reluctant to get out of their position. It's going to be very interesting on how this earnings. If he announces a split, it's going to be crazy. If I'm not mistaken, let's take a step back into time. When they did this split, it was 3-1, and that current price at 3-1 was around 290 something times 3, so it was around the 900s. So if he announced another one here, then that means he's going to go into the more retail side. I don't know. This one was a 5-1, but at that time their price was like around 150. So you're talking about 5 times 150, so that's 300, 600. So like $700-800 was around that time. I don't know. I'm just thinking of ways that could save what looks like a struggling to hold company. Like we got a golden ratio, but no explosion. We're not attacking its previous highs. Are you really a growth company anymore? So I got a lot of questions there. And the last one we're going to go ahead and break down is TMUSA. I'm kind of going a little slow. Let's go ahead and get to TMUSA. Kind of got wrapped up in that. This thing has been on this drop, right? And they did not let the drop kind of fully go through it. I was looking for the $200 level somewhere around this block, which would then bring us back to January of 2025. The April pop-up was roughly around here, and they didn't get the benefit of it. And I think it's just because they are a little overpriced. They returned 2.6 to their shareholders and 21 billion in revenue. The reason why I say overpriced is not for the fact of the EPS, but just generally from this price standpoint and their market share. I feel like right now, actually, let's rewind that. We don't feel nothing in the market. I think when it comes down to it, if these order blocks does not actually hold at these levels, then that means it needs to really, 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 really ask some questions for itself and do some soul searching. And that's why this order block down in the bottom, closer to 200, was a better sound situation. Now, we did get close to a deviation of an uptrend. This is a massive uptrend that T-Mobile has been on ever since 2023. So I do like this ticker. I think there is some profit taking happening. So if we take this whole entire 2023 and throw a fib on it, come on, behave. If we took this whole entire 2023, we're sitting on a 382, which makes sense for a solid bounce. But I really think closer to the 50. I don't think we're going to get into the 189s, but I won't be surprised if we do so because we are very flirting with a death cross. And if they don't rally, which is the reason why I'm kind of like bullish for the short term, if this does not turn into a W and start to put some pressure on the sell side, I think this could be just all build up for them to go ahead and take this down into the 618. All right. So let's go ahead and do a little quick rundown of some of the tickers that is my earnings list. Like CMG, for example, I find this one so questionable because when we really look at this, it's not like it's making its move the way that I expected. It looks like it's trying to fight against the trend that just happened. But if we really think about it, is this more pullback after a very epic run especially during the pandemic, after they turned around and cleaned up all of their junk from, they had not rotten meat, but it was like they had salmonella and this, that, third, back in the earlier parts of 2010. And you could see they've been rocking off. They were at like $1,300 a share for a long period of time, and they have a large footprint. But of course, there's companies that's coming for their lunch money, like your Bolays and everything else. So I think the split was sound. If they announce a dividend, I think that's the one that's going to probably hold them up and make this thing kind of rocket. If we go over inside of here, you can kind of see what is their share floated. It's only $1 billion. So I'm very curious. Are they going to announce dividends? Come on, Chipotle, do something. You've been kind of stagnant from $69 to $50 for a long period of time. I think your staff got enough. All right, give up some. Let's go over to MU. MU is doing something interesting as well. I was looking at this for more upside as well, because the way this whole entire trend cycle is looking, it looks like we're trying to get above 115, but we're failing to hold that. If it gets back under 106, I'll probably invalidate this whole entire trade. But for the most part, I think it can, just like the little engine I can a little bit, maybe. Because right now this is our fib, and they could be using the 236 is what I was looking at, because of the fact that it's a tech company in the semiconductor space and all of that. And the video is just ripping and roaring. And if I'm going to park money and I want exposure to semiconductors, this one is kind of a laggard, very similar to how Datadog was a laggard in the cybersecurity space. So very interesting ticker. Kind of want to see what it's going to do. And right now, it looks like it's not going too well. So maybe a bounce off of 103, and then I'll look for another trade idea. But for the most part, I need this thing to hold 115, or we're going to go ahead and throw you in the basura. Anyways, let's go ahead and end it there. I want to say thank you very much for participating for BYTTT. If you go ahead and click the link down below, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and the bell button, letting your friends know that I am the best analyst that you could actually ask questions directly, and I will bid you a fond farewell. You have a great day. Bye-bye.